to another episode of Cultivate and Keep. I'm Corey, and we got Jeremy, and today we also have with us Phil Ortiz, who we'll get to here in a second. But just wanted to say thanks for listening. I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters, and we're excited to do more stuff like this. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be interviewing more men of God, people to look up to, people to learn from, and so look out for that. But otherwise, I'm going to hand over to Jeremy to get us started.
Yeah, we were just talking about how we have a pretty big goal to get some big names on here one day. I think we talked about Tim Tebow and LT.
That's right.
It's going to happen, guys. So
this is not one of those days.
So we're starting with, lo and behold, Phil Ortiz.
As great.
Yeah, I've known Phil for a while. He's let's see, probably when I was in 6th grade when he was crushing on my sister, I think. It's probably when it happened.
Ooh.
That did happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I've known him for a while, though, and he's got a lot going on in his life, and so we wanted to have him on the show and just ask him some questions and talk to him. So welcome aboard, Phil.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. Well, tell us briefly about yourself and who you are and what you're doing right now, and how you made it on the Cultivate and Keep podcast.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess my reputation precedes me. Phil Ortiz, born and raised in East San Diego, and right now I am in a election season to run for city council for the city of El Cajon. It is in March of 2019, and the election is in 2020. So I have braved the uncharted territory of running for office. I'm not old enough to run for president yet, but still going for it. And
You'll get there one day, just like we will with getting Tim Tebow on here.
Exactly.
We're going to have Tim Tebow on, and then you're going to be president.
Baby steps.
And then we'll have you back on.
Incrementalism. Yeah. But I'll be too busy for you guys at that point.
That's-
So.
that's
Remember this
understandable.
day. We put you on the map, okay?
It's true.
Right.
Yeah. Your viewership is my votership, so it crosses paths. Yeah. I'm running for city council. I'm currently a planning commissioner for the city of El Cajon. I was appointed a couple months ago. All around just trying to improve my community, advance the kingdom of God, making sure we have strong Christian leadership in our community, not only to make good decisions, but to be that leadership role within our communities. And there's a lot of oppression for conservatives and Christians in California, and we need to engage just like any other ministry or community that needs engagement from Christians. And this is my ministry. This is my calling, and we're moving forward. Yeah,
Love it.
And we'll get to more of that later. But let's just start with kind of learning a bit about what makes Phil. Like, how did you grow up? Your family? How did you find the Lord?
Yeah.
Kind of start with, from the wee young Phil.
Well, this will only take about 3 hours, so I don't know how long this podcast.
Let's do
is.
the 2-minute version.
2-minute version,
Yeah.
Great. So, like I said, I grew up in East San Diego. Grew up Catholic, so I knew of the Lord, but I didn't know the Lord. I knew about God, but I didn't know God. That's some Christianese that I didn't understand until I was saved. But I, went through high school, random kid, partied. The father was present but absent. Then went to college, joined a fraternity, and did everything that fraternity guys do. And graduated by the skin of my teeth.
Flying C's, right?
Yeah, flying C's get degrees. No, I did it a little better than that. I ended up getting saved my senior year of college. My best friend in college died abruptly. He had type 1 diabetes, and he died due to complications of that. It was an accident. He fell down some stairs, hit his head, went into diabetic shock. He was home alone. He passed away. He was 24.
Oh my gosh.
I was 21. And so that hit me very hard. I was depressed. I was a lifeguard at the time. I mean, just crying on the lifeguard stand. I didn't make any outgoing calls for like 6 to 8 months. Drinking, popping pills, just depressant after depressant. And God revealed himself in my pain and pulled me out of that dramatically. Actually, with the book Wild at Heart, he gave me that book. And
Really?
It all goes back to Wild at Heart.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not perfect, but I mean, that was sort of part of the genesis for us too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were aware, it was Wild at Heart. In sort of me getting married last year.
Yep.
And then actually my uncle had given it to me to read before I got married. I didn't end up reading it before I got married. But then after getting married, started having like a crisis of identity and overwhelm of like, shoot, I'm a husband now, like I'm a man now, like I'm providing, we're living, I'm not just like living with my parents anymore. And so I turned to that book for sort of that guidance of like, well, what does it mean to be a man as God designed one to be? And then it sort of like kickstarted this whole thing, and then with Jeremy. And so that's pretty gnarly just to hear that. It's funny.
I didn't know that.
The impact that it's had.
Yeah, actually, it was kind of the similar. My brother was a Christian at the time. I came across that book that it was his. I read the first chapter or skimmed through it, and it talked about adventure and going out into the wilderness. I was like, this is awesome. I wasn't a Christian back then.
Yeah.
I was like, can I read this? He said, yeah, when I'm done. Never read it. And then the day I'm leaving to go to my buddy's funeral, I was at work, and in the Lost and Found was that book, Wild at Heart.
Wow.
Jeez.
And I was like, this is mine. I don't care who this is. I'm taking it.
I found it.
So, yeah.
It found me.
Yeah. So I stole something.
No.
Yeah, I stole it, but it was for a good cause. My soul. So I got saved and then started going to church, and my mom was going to Foothills, or my current church still going to Foothills. Got introduced to Home Fellowship Pastors, college group, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like you've always had like a lot of good advice to share from like that season of life. Yeah, I mean, I think we've had so many talks just about like story after story or example after example of like what you learned, like what not to do, and then like sharing that with me and obviously a lot of others. But
Yeah.
we've had like a lot of good talks about that.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head is what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my buddies, Jesse Abiel, put an analogy that has always stuck with me. And he said, I went to college and I saw these guys making bad decisions, and I just kind of saw them just running headfirst into a really steep valley, and they didn't even see the bridge right next to it going across. And now I'm having to see them struggle going up. And I was like, man, I've walked up a lot of valleys. I've had to crawl out of a lot of valleys.
Times.
And I think that's where my passion comes from is, I've walked down that road.
Yeah.
I tell so many guys, I've been down it, don't go down it. It's not worth it. I mean, I've partied harder than you probably ever could. And I've, had alumni pay for extravagant things and been at the top and the heights of the heights, and it's all for naught. So it's not worth it. Don't go down that path. So.
Yeah. And as I understand it, you were the guy at SDSU who like pumped up the student section at the sports, right? At the games.
Yeah, they
awesome.
used to
I feel
serve.
like that is like the peak of like college experience. You
Yeah,
know
it was
what I mean?
SDSU basketball.
Yeah, I mean that is
And that's big
nuts.
time too. That's
That's
big
the
time.
show.
yeah.
The show.
That's the
I
show.
still love going. We're called the show. And you got all this cheers and the student section's going nuts, and they actually served alcohol back then. And I had a beer helmet. That was my thing with cut off shirt and just going wacky bananas.
That's so funny.
And but I still go to basketball games, but I
So,
toned it down a little
Does
bit.
the current student section, do they do it justice? Are they are they lacking, man?
There's a handful of people that have kept the spirit. Hey, Pops. There's a handful of people who've kept the spirit of SDSU alive. The original people, but it's nowhere near the glory days. There's no commitment there. Well, SDSU was one of the first people or fan bases that had the cutout heads for the free throw
Really?
of random celebrities or characters or whatever. So
Because you started, right?
well, it wasn't
Can
me.
you take
No,
credit?
I can't take credit for that. No, I jumped on that bandwagon, but I kept it alive.
Yeah.
I took the baton and passed
right.
it. You know, we always need those people.
Yeah. So your degree, what was it in?
Nothing of value.
Nothing of value. So tell us about like transition from college to what you started working in. And
Yeah, so I, like many of the people in my generation, went to college, and I'm using a degree that I got a degree that I'm not using. It's in criminal justice administration. I thought I wanted to be in law enforcement, and God was protecting my path this whole time. I mean, I wanted to go into the military right out of high school, and my parents said, if you're gonna go into the military, you got to get a degree so you can go in as an officer. So that shielded me from that, and right out of college, I wanted to go into the military again. That didn't pan out. Thought about law enforcement. That didn't pan out. So God was really protecting my path and putting me in positions. And I mean, when I say I wanted to go into the military, it was a burden. To get back to your question, I'm right now, I own my own business. I'm a home energy raider. And to this day, I have no clue how I got into it. It's just an industry that emerged in 2010, and my buddy Paul, who owns an air conditioning company, said, hey, if you're looking for a career change, you should do it. And so my wife and I prayed about it, and we went for it, bootstrapped the whole thing, paid for all the equipment, no debt. Started hustling, working 14-hour days get off my full-time job and do some jobs on the side and do jobs on the weekend. And God blessed it. And I just bought my first business from a guy who does what I do. So locked up my first business acquisition 4 years into my business. So God is blessing it like crazy. I never thought I'd be evaluating homes to see how energy efficient they are.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's provided me an opportunity to give generously and to run for office. So yeah.
So before that, you were at Ashford, right?
Yeah,
I noticed you didn't mention that part. I thought I would bring it up for you. Yeah.
We're not going to let that slide.
Yeah,
we'll remind you of those days.
I'm pretty sure, as you go through interviewing more people, that will be a common trend if they live in San Diego.
Yeah.
I think 50% of the population worked at Ashford. So right out of college, I originally worked for an ambulance company. I was an EMT lifeguard for a long time out in Coronado, and then my buddy started an ambulance company, did business development for an ambulance company. It was a small one. We had 3 rigs, probably about 12 EMTs, a couple paramedics, and critical care nurses. That just wasn't a good environment. Went back to lifeguarding and then went to Ashford just on a whim. I mean, it was kind of the cool thing to do, I guess. A lot of people were getting jobs there. It was during the recession in 2009-ish, so there weren't a lot of people hiring. It was really the only game in town that was accepting applications. So became a college advisor I was at Ashford for maybe 7 years. Then started counseling military students as well. And then got my master's degree at Ashford University in organizational management, emphasizing in public administration. So another little thing that I thought time was wasted, but God's applying it to my calling now. So,
I have a question about, so you got saved your senior year of college. Did that affect sort of like where you thought you were going to go, what you were going to do, what you wanted to do? Or was God still kind of working with you and you were still sort of like trying to find your own way a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like I said, let me back up a little bit. I come from a very strong military heritage in my family. My grandfather fought in World War II. He was a belly gunner on a B-24 bomber.
Wow. And
he actually shot down 3. He has 3 confirmed kills fighting the Nazis.
That's crazy.
So whenever someone talks about their grandpa, I say, "Oh yeah, my grandpa killed Nazis." What did your grandpa do again? But I have a lot of pride. I'm very proud of my family history. my father was in the military. My grandfather was shot down, and he was a prisoner of war for 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Went through a couple marches, survived them, got tortured, beat up, didn't talk, it didn't give out any intel.
Wow.
So he's a genuine American war hero. And actually, my son is named after my grandpa.
Wesley, right?
Wesley Joseph.
Yeah.
His name is Joseph Ortiz, my grandfather.
Okay, yeah.
And he's the only Ortiz that's carrying on the Ortiz name,
Wow.
actually. My grandpa didn't have anyone to carry on his name past my generation until my son was born.
Way to come through, Phil.
Bro,
That's
on the buzzer, too, because my son was born on July 30th. Or, sorry, June 30th, and my grandpa died July 1st.
Wow.
He died right after he was born. He got to see his great grandson
that's
carry on his
awesome.
name,
Wow.
his picture, and then he passed
Oh yeah, I saw that
on
yeah.
Facebook. It was
Yeah.
that was a crazy
Yeah,
weekend.
I'm sure.
So huge military history. I was the kid that had Army clothes, and my cousin was in Desert Storm in the Air Cavalry, and my mom was like, a real G.I. Joe's gonna come and visit you, and I was all excited. And then when he got there, he's just my cousin, but he's like older than me. When he got there, I showed up and I ran into the closet and hid and peed my pants. Like, that's how excited I was about
Like a superhero.
Yeah, it was like a superhero. So this is like, how excited I was to be in the military. So that was my trajectory. That's what I always wanted to do. And I got saved. And I just kind of felt like in the back of my head, I didn't know God was speaking to me. He's like, you need to be here in community right now, and learning about me, and having a relationship with me. You being in boot camp, and off somewhere else isn't where you're going to grow.
Wow.
And so that was a very difficult and tumultuous time, because like I said, I was in a fraternity, and that's all about brotherhood.
Yeah.
And I built these bonds with these great guys. They are good guys. They're stand-up individuals. And then I had to separate myself from that lifestyle, from these guys that helped me through really tough times. One of my best friends died, and they're the ones that were there for me, and my uncle died during that time, and I was homeless for a while in college and didn't eat for a couple days. And so those are the guys that supported me, and I had to separate myself from that lifestyle, as well as give up something that I've always wanted to do, is being in the military. And so that was a very difficult divorce, I guess is the best way to describe it. And that's why I got the job at Ashford, really, is I was kind of submitting to the path that God was blocking me away from, and kind of doors were opening up in other ones, and I didn't know it at the time, but I got my master's in public administration, and it's helping me now. And working at Ashford prepared me to start my own business. As bad as it was, I gained a lot of business acumen. I know how to conduct meetings and emails and speak professionally on a different level. And that really groomed me to be able to step into a business and run it, and talk to, CEOs of huge development companies with confidence, and know boundaries, and know just certain cadences of how it is to operate in the business world. If I would have done that as a lifeguard, never would have happened. So
right.
Did that
super
answer your
interesting.
question? Or?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The reason why I think we wanted to bring up sort of like this middle time that you sort of skipped over a little bit is because we've been talking more recently about like this idea of like point A to point B, like where you start to where you want to end up. Usually like the middle of that is just like, it's hard and it's grueling and it's doing things that you don't like and it's being uncomfortable and it's submitting yourself to God's will and maybe doing things that you didn't ever think you were going to be doing. Or maybe it's just like kind of putting your head down and investing in something, knowing that like it's going to pay off in a couple of years, not in a couple of months.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm more curious about that, just to learn sort of like what got you to where you are today in between like getting saved.
I mean, honestly, it was being committed to the Lord. Like if and that was when I was coming to the Lord during that time.
Yeah.
So when I first came to the Lord, it was I don't know, as when you're new in your faith, I feel like God is really close to you.
Yeah.
And he presses in and he shows him, he reveals himself daily. And that's not to say that doesn't happen when you're old in your faith. I guess that's the right term. But he was really close to me, and it was daily. Just I was more focused on him, and so I was just following him. But that's not to say it wasn't hard to like I said, divorce that identity that had been built up for me with my family's military heritage and history, and the expectation and desire that was built. And I mean, like, it was to the point where I'd see someone with a Vietnam service or in camis in their uniform and their digis, and my eyes would dart over there, and I'd feel this sinking in my chest, and this regret and this almost shame. It's like, your whole family served, why? And so there's this, like, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just there's a lot of angst and frustration and confusion. Wow. And it was really deep seated in me. So it takes a lot of sacrificial understanding to get to the point where I could say, okay, God, this is your will, not mine. I mean, this isn't even my life. This is your life. And, people would talk to me and tell me, Phil, you do great in the military, but that's going to be easy for you. You could make a lot bigger an impact doing something else, and this, but I wouldn't listen to it. I couldn't hear it. I had no clue. So, it was being close to the Lord, and I really can't attribute it to anything else. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You mentioned a time when you were like bridging a gap from like the frat life to church, and you felt like God was wanting you to like immerse yourself in community.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about like community and groups and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did that look like for you practically, and like how did you like just dive into building like a whole new friend group and community?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. I built a reputation of no one wanting to walk across San Diego State campus with me because it would take 3 hours because I knew everyone.
Yeah.
So I had friends everywhere. And I had to divorce that. I keep using that word, but that's really what it was. I had to walk away from it. And I remember just slowly making decisions, being convicted, because I was still living with my frat guys and there were still parties going on. And I'll tell you how green I was. I started going to a home group with Taylor Abiel, and we were talking about fasting. And, he asked us, think about something you could fast. If you have any questions, come up to me. So I came up to Taylor and I was like, hey, I have this great idea for fasting for this 40 days. I'm not going to get drunk. And Taylor's like, that's great, buddy. What about maybe not drinking alcohol at all for 40 days? And I was like, yeah, that's even better idea.
What a revelation.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
so
So when you think about this, like, I was really starting from ground zero.
Let's not get drunk.
Yeah. I'm not going to
proud.
get drunk. No, I was so proud of myself. He handled it the best. He
Was that like in a group, like raise your hand, like, or was it like one-on-one, like after
Everyone
the
share
night?
what you're going to fast.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. But I did make a mistake like that but I'll save that for later if it comes up. But there was a situation like that. But so yeah, I just started getting convicted over these things, and obviously that didn't go over well with my buddies. I'm not drinking and I'm not partying, and girls are coming up to me, and I'm like, stiff arming them, putting them on ice, and just because there's conviction after conviction that comes up, maybe week after week or month after month, new things are revealing. And so, I eventually just prayed really quickly. I prayed over and over again. Will someone come up to rent my room so I can move out? And I ended up moving out of my the house I was living in with my buddies, and moved back in with my mom. And she was renting out all of her rooms. So I actually just slept on the couch. Didn't have a place to go. So I slept on the couch, and then I remember for my
on your mom's couch.
On my mom's couch.
When other people are living there.
Yeah. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have any friends.
Wow.
So and then for my 25th birthday or my 26th birthday, I didn't have any friends. So I didn't know what to do. So I remember for my 26th birthday, what I did was I played catchphrase with my grandma, my grandpa, my aunt, 10 Taylor Peterson, Jesse Peter,
Yeah.
Taylor Peterson and Marla Mercado, and David Stuckey.
Wow.
These I didn't have any. I had no friends.
Sounds like a riveting group.
Oh my goodness! I looked around and
Real
I was
ruckus
like,
going on.
"This is like
What's
rough."
going on?
No, not just. But they were my only friends. I was
Yeah.
just starting to go to church, and I was like, this. Like I could call up 4 dozen people, and I could hang out at any point. But I was like, I can't do this. Like God has called me to something deeper. And I know the path that I've gone down, and I can't ignore what God's done in my life and how He's revealed me. And I kept going back to those times where He came through for me, and I cannot ignore that. And so I just kept kind of pushing forward and introducing myself. And Taylor was a good friend, my home fellowship pastor. And I started making friends with people who were a little new in their faith as well. That's where I think I got rooted is. People who were new in their faith or new to the church that I was going to. I found those people, I sought them out, and developed a good relationship with them. And that's how I kind of got some roots to grab hold. That was the story of going from college partier to straight edge Darrow Christian.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. Like the theme of like conviction, I feel like most people when they become a Christian, like they have a lot of conviction, but maybe not a lot of like action in their life yet. It's sort of like this
like
really
a slow transition.
Yeah, like I don't know. I feel like I haven't heard someone like have such a strong conviction to just like make such a 180 flip, especially like when you're the popular guy. Like I wouldn't know what that's like. You know what I mean? But like. I can only imagine how hard that is.
It's great. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But just how hard that is to walk away from this whole life and like persona and like you said, your identity really is wrapped up into it. But that conviction apparently was so strong that God flipped you around and just like you sort of held on to that dearly in this new life that He was creating for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just the dramatic circumstances of having someone die. That's your best friend, and being so depressed and suicidal, really. I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, the thought of, clocking out early definitely crossed my mind a couple times. But and I have grace for people who are developing conviction. And I think we all need to have grace for people who are developing that conviction. You can't put your expectations on how quickly they repent and how quickly their actions align with what your expectation is, what they should be. The way I see it is if they're getting revelation, or even one revelation of God, that's 1 degree closer they are with God, and we're supposed to point them to the love of Christ. We're not supposed to, be on the sidewalk waving our signs and shaking our fingers and looking down at them. I think it's a relationship, and some people have different paces at it, and you have to see what they're becoming, and not what they were, So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the next point. Wanted to ask you about Rachel and how you guys met, and kind of just overall like words of advice, kind of what you learned from that dating process to getting married to striking out a few times to finally making it happen. Yeah.
I was striking out swinging.
Really?
Yeah. I have a lot to say about that. We've had some talks, Jeremy.
Yeah, I was thinking as you came in here, I think one of our good talks was I think I was just graduating high school, and a girl that I was dating like just broke up with me, and I was like super like surprisingly heartbroken, and I was pretty sad. Yeah. And I was here in the living room upstairs, and we were talking, and you said to me, you was like, dude, like, you got to find a girl that is 100% like completely into you and only you. Yeah. And like by that, you didn't mean like someone that's like crazy over you, but just like a girl that like simply is invested in who you are and like that wants you and you only. I felt that was like super like good advice, and it was like really well put. You don't want a girl that's like weighing her options or like not really set on you. And so it was just that really like settled with me.
Yeah, you want someone Team Jeremy.
Exactly.
She got her pom-poms out.
She's in the game,
She's your biggest fan. Yeah. She's on the sideline. Yeah, I'll be honest, dating is the dating season's tough, man.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's the worst.
Oh, bro. Like, that's probably what, I mean, it's like, you put your heart out there, and most, everyone in the Christian circle, I had to learn all these rules on the fly, and so it's like, guard your heart, guard her heart, but it's like, dude, like, I'm putting my heart out there too, and I'm getting tore up a little bit because it's like, I'm trying to see if this works, and so each time you get tore up, you got to, put your boots back on and get back in the game and try it out, but I think you just got to, you have to, so going back to what Rachel, I met her, I actually was doing a home fellowship for her younger sister, Becky, and younger brother, Jared, and I had always heard about this older sister, and then we just started chatting on Facebook, and then we just met kind of on a blind date, to be honest. I was like, hey, you want to go grab some coffee? But I don't drink coffee. So I just kind of sat there and
gotta do what you gotta do.
Watched her drink coffee. But I think what was frustrating was that through the dating season was that when I expressed interest in a girl, I should say a young woman, they fast forwarded through their mind was, we're going to get married. And that really set a wrong foundation for the reality of a relationship in Western dating. And I think it's important to know that, you're trying to figure out if this works, if it jives between you two. And it's okay not to move forward in a relationship if you just don't feel like it works, It's easier to love someone if you like them. Yeah. And we have to love our wives like Christ loved the church, and it will be easier if you like the person, so make sure you
don't
like
make it hard on yourself.
Don't make it hard on yourself, man. Come on. The other good piece of advice that I got was find someone from your tribe. What Ken Fish meant by that, traveling pastor, he said, if there's someone from your tribe, in your community, in your church, maybe even from the same town, you're going to have the same mindset. You're going to have the same beliefs. You're going to be running in the same direction. Yeah. That's the other thing. Start running your race. Do what you're going to do, and then look around and see who's running next to you. That's the best advice I can give for the relationship, and that's what Rach was doing. I mean, she was going to Foothills, and she was just trying to figure things out, like all of us. We hit it off, and we're still there. I mean, we've had our challenges, some deep ones. That we're still working through, but you're going to have to go through challenges with anybody.
Oh yeah.
It's, if you don't go through any challenges in marriage, personality or past or future or circumstances, then you might not have a real relationship.
Yeah. Well, we are challenges, right? I mean,
yes,
we're challenges to each other too.
Yes. Two people, two imperfect people coming together, there's going to be issues, man. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of issues. I don't know how you culminate all the relationships that I have, but I just say that we're getting a lot of visitors coming through.
We're
here.
getting bombarded.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy right now.
Yeah, none of them are my visitors. That's weird. I know. I feel like I should have like 15 by now.
You're so popular.
I'm just kidding.
He's past those days.
No one cares about me.
Washed up Phil.
Yeah, I'm a has-been. So yeah, relationships. I mean, find someone who's running next to you. Find someone that can be on your team, that likes you, that wants to. My sister said something that was really cool. She said to her husband, and she's not even a Christian, she said, "I'm honored to take your last name. It is an honor that I get to have your last name." That is a very good way to phrase having a respect for someone, but we're all work in progress. I mean, you can't put these high expectations on people. My wife had a good analogy about how to find someone is, if you're going to build a cake, you have to have the actual physical cake, and then you got frosting and some toppings and stuff. Well, the meat and potatoes of a good relationship is, your wife loves Jesus. That's unquestionable. There's some other pedigree stuff that you have to, and that's the main bakings of a cake. That's what forms the cake.
Yeah.
You need that. That's not that can't be in question.
Mm-hmm.
It's a non-negotiable. And then everything beyond that is the icing. It's what makes it taste good. And what makes it great. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want a bland cake. You got to have some icing on there.
Yeah.
Is this
Preach,
analogy?
Phil.
Is
Preach.
this analogy coming through?
I'm feeling it.
But you
It's
can't.
landing.
But you can't have the 18 tier with the Cake Boss decorations and every little detail that you want. You need something. You need the structure of the cake, and you just can't have icing either. You can't just have, because that's what I was looking for in the world with these girls. The pretty girls that didn't have any ambition or any conviction or anything, any relationship with Jesus. You can't. You also just be a blob of icing.
Yeah.
That's not a cake.
No.
So it was a good analogy for figuring out the balance of what to look for in a wife.
And how long were you guys dating until you got engaged, and then how long until you got married? And
so we dated for over a year. I want to say a little over a year and 3 months. We were engaged for as long as it took to plan the wedding. I think it was 6 months, maybe less.
Now that is probably the worst stage, I would say, of all this.
Yeah, that's rough for a couple different reasons.
Yeah.
Like planning a wedding is the worst.
Yeah.
Waiting to get intimate with your wife is the worst. The temptation just ramps up to 11. You guys are both married. You just went through it, Jeremy. It's not a good time, but I think everyone that I've talked to have said, I want to elope. I want to just go to Vegas.
Oh,
we had that serious talk.
Several
should
times.
we? Yeah, should we just go for it?
It's honestly, my good buddy Brock, he just had a wedding.
Dude, Connie saw that on Facebook and she was like, "Did you see this? They got engaged and married within 2 weeks." And she was like, "That's how it should have been done." And I was like, man.
They invited 30 people.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
It was it was in their backyard.
Yeah.
It's like, why spend, and at the end of the day, it's like, what was the advice? I think I told you, I was like, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, you're going to be there, she's going to be there, and you're going to get married. And really, that's all that matters.
That's all you're going to remember, too.
Yeah, you get a couple pictures. Yeah, the day goes by so fast. Yeah, so just have some perspective. Don't put too much emphasis and too many fights on it. It's like, you know what? If these people can't come, it's not a big deal, man.
Yeah. So engaged, married, all in all, year and a half, 2 years. When did you guys have Wesley, and kind of how's that been? And also want to know, with that, in context, so that happened and then the business. So kind of tell me about those two and the timeline and how that all developed.
So we took the advice to take a step back and have a couple years to just hang out and get our relationship to be in stride with each other. That was super good advice. We took 2 years before we started trying to have kids. And during that time, it was us really deciding, who's our community going to be? Rachel's family is all Christians, but my family isn't, and, we're going to build our own church family of, my brothers in Christ. And so that was really of who as a couple was going through the same season as us, really evaluating who we feel close to, who do you want to build a life with. So that really was that 2 years that we took to go on trips with people and go out to dinner with them and hang out and see who we jived with as a couple. And then we, worked on our relationship too a bunch. We went through some marriage counseling and just wanted to set our relationship up for success. Things came up 3 months into our relationship that I didn't know about, about my wife. And we're like, what? We're doing, this is what's going on? Oh my goodness. And so it got real quick.
As it does.
And the best advice I got was, hey, work these things out right now, because when you have a toddler running around, you're not going to have any mental capacity to really devote to figuring this stuff up and strengthening your marriage or strengthening your relationship with God. You got a very short amount of time to take advantage of figuring out what that looks like.
Yeah, I've had so far, like, being married, it's been interesting. Like, before I was married, like, you hear, like, once you're married, no going back, like, you're stuck, and you hear that, and you're like, yeah, of course I understand that. Then you're married, and then it's like, oh, you are actually stuck. Like, there is no like changing. And it was funny because, like, when we dated, when stuff would come up, like, I never like thought about like a whole lot about, like, you know, wanting to like end the relationship. I always thought we were gonna stick it out, but like now there is no option. Like, you're in it.
Yeah.
And we haven't had anything crazy, but there's been a few things. There's like been some difficult conversations, and it's kind of been like, wow, like there's no other option. Like, we have to work this out.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thought, and it's just crazy. Like,
I don't know of a better way to say it, to get it through to single guys' heads. That's like, hey, like there's no backing out of this.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think it comprehends, kind of like when you go into college and you just take out $50,000 in student loans and you don't realize how much money that is
Right.
until you're
It's
starting
only a couple zeros.
Yeah. Oh, I already took out 50 grand. What's another 5 grand? It's like, dude. But all that to say, I haven't come up with a good way to figure out how to tell people that. So,
We see, I feel like that about having kids now. Of like, I know that once we start having kids, there's no going back. You can't just put them back in. You know what I mean? And like, now your life is going to be
I haven't heard of that way
totally
before.
different.
I have a good way of, if you want to figure out what it's like to have kids, set an alarm every hour on the hour during the night, and then stay up for 40 minutes each time, and that's what it's like to have a kid.
So like the 20-minute intervals of sleep.
Oh, and then go to San Diego State and grab a frat guy, get him drunk, and then take care of him for the whole day. Like, that's what it's like to be a
That's a
parent.
great
You're
analogy.
taking care of a drunk person and with no sleep.
Yep.
That's changing them, making sure they don't
Right.
kill themselves.
They don't have any like use or sort of like
No.
they're just a burden for a long time.
It is. I am trying to keep you alive. My wife gets discouraged sometime, and I'm like, "Is Wesley alive?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Hey, thumbs up, baby, high five. Hey, that's all you need to do. If you're alive and he's alive, that's a win."
Yeah. No, I mean, we're exaggerating a bit, but just all that to say, like, once you have kids, like it really is a very big moment. And so, like, well, yeah, put yourself in the right place in life in order to get there.
Yeah.
So, you know, Jeremy and I are both in that place now where, you know, I obviously want to have lots of kids one day and, like, relatively soon. And I'm sure Jeremy and Connie eventually want to have kids too. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, we're going to freaking enjoy these couple of years of just investing into our relationship. And because we know that just like getting married, once you have kids, then you're in the next chapter. Like, it's happening. You can't just... You have to go with it after that.
The way I've kind of set myself up is I don't get to do anything for myself. And if I do get to do something for myself, it's like a cherry on top. But I've just kind of set that expectation in my own heart, in my head, saying, hey, everything's for my wife and my kids. And if I get, you know, to go on a hunting trip, or I get to, you know, do this or that, then that I'm lucky. So everyththing's for them. I mean, you don't have an option at that point. Kind of like you don't have an option of leaving your wife. You don't have an option not to take care of your kids. I mean, they really are. But I mean, so I was talking to someone recently, and they didn't want to have kids, and they couldn't understand why anyone wanted to have kids. And the only way I could describe it to them with someone at that point was, I just feel lucky I get to be his dad. Like, that's the only way I could describe it. Is like, man, like, I am so lucky that I get to hang out with you and raise you. He's like the coolest little thing on this planet, and I just feel like I won the lottery. You know, that's really the only way I could describe it. My wife and I talk about it all the time. Like, we're so lucky to be his parents. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So remember that at 3 a.m. or, you know.
I'm so lucky.
Oh my gosh, I am the luckiest person on earth.
Hey, baby, feel lucky? Go get him up.
Yeah, when he, like, you know, pooped all over his jammies, and it's 2 a.m. and I'm trying to clean it up, and it's like, man, I'm so lucky.
Can't wait.
Yeah, you guys should be looking. This is the hard sell that I'm giving you on being parents. Yeah.
So how tell us about the business, how that started, and then kind of the dynamic with being fairly newly married, young child and new business, and then
Yeah, we actually started the business. I mean, so let me back up. I was kind of pushed into starting the business because I was in a really bad job. I was chasing money, and it was the wrong thing to do. I mean, it was a nice raise, but it was the wrong thing to do, and so I had to find a way out. And God was just kind of bringing up this opportunity again to start my own business. I had clients saying, "Hey, I'd use you if you started this business." And so Rach and I, like I said, we bootstrapped it, and we ended up moving into her parents' house to save up money and lower our expenses so we could start the business. And I guess it was kind of a Dave Ramsey kind of thing, to live extreme, to live like no one else, so one day you can live like no one else.
Right.
So we moved in, we downgraded, we put our stuff in storage. We moved into just one bedroom in her parents' house. I had to cook on Tuesdays. We had to cook on Tuesdays, family dinner, and so that made it a lot easier to start the business. It was really low risk. Rachel was working at the time, so we were able to live off her income with our lowered expenses. We didn't have any car payments. We paid those off. She didn't have any school debt, which is amazing. I still have school debt, but I did a lot to reduce that but previous to this. So we really were strategic in, first I followed the Lord and his leading. And then 2, we were strategic about it. We're like, okay, what is the best possible scenario we could do? And so we moved into her parents' house, and they blessed us. Originally, it was they were going to allow us to move in to buy a house so we could save it to buy a house, but it coincided with starting the business. And then we actually conceived my son in
Rachel's old
my
room.
in-laws in Rachel's old room. And actually, fun fact to the masses, hopefully Tim and Marianne won't get too mad about this, but
I'm so excited to hear this.
Tim and Marianne conceived Rachel in that room.
No.
Yeah.
So now it's like tradition.
It's tradition, so Wesley's gonna have to
Okay, son.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah. And Rachel was the firstborn, and Wesley's the firstborn. So
That's funny.
something magical about that room. Yeah, so after we found out Rach was pregnant, her parents were like, "We love you guys, but we don't love you that much to have a screaming baby
Get out.
in the house, so get out." So we moved back into the condo that I owned.
And how long have you guys been living there?
So we don't live in the condo anymore.
In her parents' house.
We were there almost a year.
Okay.
We lived there almost a year.
Dude, I don't think I could do that. Like, I don't know, man.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone says that, and it's oof.
Yeah, my eyebrows are up and my eyes are wide, saying I wouldn't recommend it.
You can't see them now, but
Yeah, as you can imagine. Just because you have to have a good relationship with your in-laws, and I had a great relationship with them. Really good family, really stable. I mean, but your families had their kids. Everyone's lived here
with the wife, except except Jenny and Brian. But
Tori and Daniel. So it's not out of the question. But you just have to have a family that understands boundaries and is healthy, and Rachel's family has that, and they had to make some adjustments, but they were super generous, and it set us up to start this business. Now Rachel doesn't have to work. And we were able to buy a house. They were just going to give us some money to buy a house, but this allowed us to save up a lot more money than they would have been able to give us. And I mean, we blessed them being there, and they blessed us, in so many different levels. I didn't grow up in a family that had family dinner. You just kind of come home and you just kind of find what's in the fridge and you eat, and mom made dinner one night and it's in the fridge already, and you just kind of scrounge.
Free for all, yeah.
Yeah, man. So I learned the importance of it. So there were things that came out of it that blessed me deeply, and vice versa with Rachel's family too. So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So with the business, tell us. Well, let's go into politics. Kind of want to hear about how you're starting that, but also want to know like how are you managing a family? Young kid, the business, politics, friends. I was talking with Nathan, one of your good friends.
Yeah.
And he was kind of saying like looking back, like all these guys in history who have done much with their life. All these guys like. They didn't just have that one thing they did. Like they did all that on top of like their normal life. So a job and having a family and all that. And I feel like you're like a good example of that right now in present day. Like you are doing all these extra activities while doing a normal life. That someone would call a normal life that we would call full and overwhelming. So
Right.
want to know like how you're doing it and what does it look like and yeah.
It's messy. I don't have it down. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, I'm constantly having to work through my schedule with Rach and find time. But I want to emphasize first is I wouldn't have been able to do any of this if it wasn't for following the Lord, not going into the military and being in contract and not starting this business. Like if I didn't follow the Lord, these opportunities wouldn't have been there. So I needed to understand following the Lord first. What is it? Seek first the kingdom and all else will be added to you was the principle that I applied to this situation. And with time, no time is wasted with God. So, that's really has been the catalyst to me, really knowing, enabling me to run for politics, to run for office and engage in politics. So I don't know that I could have done it without it. Moving beyond that, how do I do it? I just kind of I grew up seeing my family serve the military and go on deployment for 6 months or go on deployment for a year or be in a prison camp, and that's serving your country. And I kind of feel like that's the way it should be with our politicians and our elected officials. You should have that same expectation of serving your country in the respect that you're going to miss out on some stuff and you're going to sacrifice some stuff and you're going to have to give up some things if you want to lead your community. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. And it's kind of a bummer that people get into office to gain prestige and power and money. And so God's blessed my business. I'm able to have some extra income. I'm able to have my wife at home, and she maintains her house very well, so it's normal. I work from home, so I'm with my family. During the day, so when I go to events at night, it's not a big deal. So I think that all that to say is I followed the Lord and he gave me the means to be able to do this, and he called me to do this. Really, he gave Rach and I a word to do this. So yeah.
And so like what is your vision now, like moving into politics? And could you just like briefly explain like sort of your involvement now, what you're looking to get, how you're looking to get more involved, like sort of where do you see yourself going and investing more into the political world?
Well, I want to help. I want to help my community, and I want to serve it. Like I said, I'm viewing this as a ministry. And just like, the youth venture teen centers, that these kids are neglected and frustrating and disrespectful, and it's a dark area, but we still need to inject ourselves into it. It's the same thing with politics. I mean, it's a dark world, and there's people out there with a poor moral compass, bad ideas, and not a lot of love and not a lot of life. Counterfeit love is really what it is. It's not genuine Christ-like love. And so, my goal is to follow the Lord. That's really what it is. And right now he's placed me in an opportunity to run for city council and lead part of El Cajon. And hopefully, if the Lord opens up doors in other directions, that's where I want to go. But I really want to set a standard of service, like I said, that bringing in a new standard of service to our elected officials, saying you should lose something by doing this. This should be a volunteer. Yeah. There's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer. And when you have volunteers, I mean, think about the best volunteers in the world accomplish the greatest things. Mother Teresa, You know, that's a very low hanging fruit volunteer of, I mean, even Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
He was a volunteer. He didn't get paid for the civil rights movement.
Right.
Those are the strongest people in the world because they're doing it for the right reasons. And so, if I can move that boat 1 degree to, you should lose something if you want to serve our country, like military service members, I think that will attract people that deserve to be there, instead of people who are looking to exploit the position. And like I said, I mean, El Cajon has some big opportunities and some challenges. There's a big depressed area in El Cajon, a lot of low-income housing, and I want to help people. I mean, and there's a fight for the soul of our country going on right now in America, and I need to be part of that fight. I think Christians need to be part of that fight. I think we need to be showing people what a good life looks like, and not be afraid to show it and not hide from it and engage in this political process. We have an opportunity to do that, and I think it's our duty to do it. So yeah, well, that's awesome. Yeah,
I feel like there's sort of like the epitome of like what is like, I don't know, the Christian man, like what are all the things that he's doing, and it's like
as Phil's talking, I'm like,
yeah,
this
like,
is it.
Yeah, like I mean, you don't really get to see it that often anymore, and there's only so many examples, and so it's great to like hear it from the source. You know what I mean? Like there could be, I don't know, a story floating around, or someone you see on TV, and you think like, oh, good for him, that's great, but to see it sort of like from the ground up and like actually experience with someone. I mean, I feel blessed that we get to experience this like in East County, in El Cajon, like with people that we know, and just sort of be along the journey with you, but also understanding at a deeper level, like this is, you know, the life that God has for you, and this is how he wants to, you know, advance the kingdom through you. And then like to see someone doing it, it's like, wow, okay, people are doing this, you know what I mean? Like we can do it too, you know?
I was the same way. I didn't see any Christians, you know, standing up for good ideals and principles in the public sector, in the public realm. But then I started getting involved, and we have incredible leaders in East County. Bill Wells is the mayor of El Cajon, devout Christian. He speaks at our youth conference at our church. Incredible man of God. Brian Jones, he's our state senator. Outstanding man of God. He loves and reveres the Lord. These are men that have found their stride, that are advancing the kingdom of God in their families, in their communities, and bringing good principles and ideals to the laws of this land. And I'm going to get on my soapbox one more time and say, I always don't like it when Christians say, like, our only job is to, you know, spread the gospel. I'm like, no, you have to live in this world, and this world can pass bad laws. I give them this analogy. Imagine you're out to eat with your buddies at a restaurant, and you know how it works is you all order your own stuff, the check comes, and then you got to figure out how much you owe. You all put your cards in, your credit cards in. Well, imagine you went out to eat, you went to the bathroom, and then when you were gone, your buddies decided that you're going to pick up 80% of the tab, and they're only going to pay for 20%. And they come back, you come back from the bathroom, and they tell you, and I mean, your response would be, that's garbage. Like, yeah, right. I'm not going to sign off on that. And they go, I don't care. It's a democracy. We voted. Well, when you don't engage in politics, and when you don't vote, and you don't know the laws that are being passed, and you don't stand up for what's good and right, that's exactly what's happening, is they're pushing the tab or pushing these bad laws on you, and you're going to have to live under it whether you like it or not. We have an opportunity to shape and form that. So I know it's hard for Christians to get jammed up a lot about getting involved in politics because we look at Jesus and he's perfect and the Bible is complete and it's whole and it's perfect. And then we look at politics and Washington, D.C. and Congress and the president and whoever else is out there. And it's like, oh, it's so dirty and confusing and I don't get it and I just want to stay away from it. But that's where we need to bring our blueprint of a good life that Jesus gives us into that realm. It's possible.
Right.
The founders did it. You know, why can't we? So
well, that's a good point too, because like our mission is to advance God's kingdom and to bring heaven to earth and like to do God's will here. And who are we to let the world like live in complete and utter rebellion and destruction
Yeah.
and in complete ignorance of God.
Yeah.
Like, if we're letting that happen, then like that's the opposite of God's kingdom advancing. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
it would be a disservice to not be involved in
Yep.
in everyone. Like, no matter how kind of sticky or icky something like politics is, you can't ignore it. It's not one of the things that you get to kind of let slide by.
It's just like the weather. You can't ignore it. You know, the politics has just as much effect on your life as the weather does. Just, you're not going to ignore if your house doesn't have a roof. You know,
Yeah.
you're going to do something about it. It's the same kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not advocating for an aristocracy or anything like that.
Right.
But we need to be engaged. And I mean, the Bible puts out good financial principles, and the majority of the country, whether it's the federal government, state governments, or cities, don't practice good financial management. Being indebted to people is not good, and for some reason we don't hold that principle. And so we need to. That's just one small thing, you know. So,
Yeah. Well, I think we're close to wrapping up, but
Yeah.
we have a couple just sort of like quicker, more
Off the
like
cuff, yeah.
off the cuff questions for you. If you can go back and sort of have like a heart to heart with 18-year-old Phil, what would you tell him? What advice would you give him, maybe about being a man or growing up? Just if you had that one chance to have one little heart to heart with him.
don't follow your heart.
Yeah.
That's honestly what I'd say is man, that's a tough conversation to have with a 18-year-old Phil. But you know, I'd say don't follow your heart. You know, and you know, I mean, it'd be too long of a conversation to have. But I just say don't follow your heart. You got to follow your head and follow God, and your little brother's onto something. Keep going with it, because he was a Christian back then, and he was following the Lord very strongly. And so I'd say follow God, forget about everything else. It'll work out if you follow God.
Side note: get a haircut.
Oh, yo, you've seen the pictures.
I've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Yo, I had
Curly, man.
Yeah.
Super curly.
So I played soccer, and so the longer my hair got, the better
faster
I
you were,
was.
yeah.
It's kind of like Samson with his strength. But yeah, I was good. That's what I did.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Let's move on from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, please.
Next.
See, favorite books. What would you? Yeah, favorite books.
Man, favorite books. Well, I have to say Wild at Heart, because that's really the book that saved me. That's always got a special place in my heart. If You Can Keep It is a good one. It's about who's the author? I'm forgetting. He wrote the biography of Bonhoeffer. I forget.
Oh.
If You Can Keep It, look it up. It's
Okay.
fantastic. And then the American Miracle. That's another really good one. Talks about the foundation of our country and how there really was a presence of God, and God was moving to orchestrate a lot of the formation of the United States. Original Intent is another good one by David Barton. It talks about what the Constitution's original intent was. Zig Ziglar, See You at the Top, is a good one. Your dad gave me that one, Corey. That's a really good one. Jeremy, yeah. I don't know your dad, Corey.
I'll let it
okay.
slide.
I'm sure he's a great guy, though. Yeah, I'd say those are the ones I'm reading right now. Case for Faith was another good one that I loved. So
Yeah. So who do you look up to? I mean, so we look up to guys like you and others, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm curious who you look up to. Who are the people that you go to for advice, or that you read up on, or that you sort of model after?
Yeah, you know, the guy that got to my attention and my ear that I'll actually seek out is, in my realm, is Mike Slater. You can look up his podcast. Yeah. He is one of the best thinkers in Southern California. I think he's my age. He's, you know, young, early 30s. He's got an AM radio show in the middle of the afternoon. He's got podcasts, but he's a good Christian, and he's a patriot. And he really loves our country. He knows how to blend those two very well. And he gives the why. A lot of commentators only give the results. Don't do this or do this. Democrats do this. Liberals do this. Conservatives do this. He says the why behind it, the meaning behind it. Mike Slater, Bill Wells, like I said, Brian Jones, these men. Mark Hoffman, our pastor, but I'm going to stick with Mike as a guy that I look up to a lot.
Cool.
Yeah.
What do you look forward to in the coming years and in the future? And
Getting a win in 2020, baby. Getting a win.
getting the W.
Yeah, getting the W. No, I'm excited to build my family. We want more kids, so we're working on that right now. I'm excited to build my business so I can give more money to the kingdom to kingdom purposes.
Plural, Phil. Businesses.
Build my businesses. Yeah, I'm actually working on building another business right now, but I want to build my businesses so they can give. Every time I get a sale or I get a new account, it's like awesome. Now I'm taking that money and it's being purposed to kingdom purposes now. Every sale, it's like, all right, whatever they were spending on, that's going to burn, the other people that get the profit. Okay, we're helping out Youth Venture. We're helping out this ministry, that ministry. And then, I'm going against a socialist for my election. He's a devout socialist. And
for El Cajon City Council.
El Cajon City Council. I mean, he's got the sickle and cross background on his profile for Facebook. Like, just twisted, dude. And so it's like, I look at our backgrounds, like, I have the American flag on my heart, and he's got the hammer and sickle. I feel like Rocky and in Rocky 4 fighting, bro, like, this is evil ideologies. And so I want to win.
Wow.
I need to win. We need to win. So I'm looking forward to building my family and the election in 2020.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you could say one thing to the next generation of Christian men, what would it be?
I feel like Christian men get jammed up thinking that they're not following the Lord close enough and they're not doing a good enough job, especially good men that are listening to podcasts like this, and they think that they're not good enough. And I just, one of the best pieces of advice someone gave me was, God's already given you the tools to make decisions. You have what it takes. You have wisdom. If you don't have it, you already know how to seek it out. You're seeking wisdom currently. You're reading your Bible. You're submitted to authority. You're submitted to the Lord. I see a lot of these guys get jammed up and they're just not sure of themselves. And you got to walk in some confidence. You got to put your strap up your boots and go engage in the world and say, no, I am a good man. I'm doing what the Lord tells me to. See yourself as that person and go step into the world and change it. I got jammed up not thinking I was good enough. I know a lot of my buddies are like, oh, is this the way I'm supposed to go? This and that. But go change the world. Compared to what the other men that are out there, the defilers and the fornicators and the sinners and just the grossness out in the world, you are qualified for more positions than you think you are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If people want to follow you and even donate to your campaign, how can they do that?
Just go to my Facebook page and message me. I don't have my campaign website up.
Yeah, it's new.
It's not up, but it will. I have the domain. It will be www.electphilortiz.com.
Okay.
Cool.
And so I'm going to use that as my campaign page for all future campaigns.
Okay.
So electphilortiz.com.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, by the time this publishes, hopefully you'll have it live.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
So you can find it. It's electphilortiz.com.
Yeah, and I'll probably scare away most of your listeners, so I apologize for that in advance.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Phil, so much for coming on and for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been a pleasure just to be able to steal an hour and so of your time. But it's been fantastic. Truly, thank you.
You guys are great guys. Keep it up.
Thanks, bro.
All right. Talk to you later.